Good morning. Yesterday we discussed the fast of the firstborns. Today let's move on to talk about how and when one disposes of chametz this year. So we know there's a very severe punishment for a person who eats chametz on Pesach. The Torah tells us this is the punishment of karet. Karet means, in the Rambam's philosophy, that a person ceases to exist after he dies. He has no identity in the world to come. This is only if a person eats chametz during the 7 days of Pesach. Having said that, the Torah doesn't allow us to eat chametz already from midday, the day before Pesach. This is because in the times of the temple, you would have the Korban Pesach sacrificed already from midday. And so the Torah tells us at the same time the Korban Pesach is being sacrificed, it's forbidden to eat, to have benefit, or to own chametz already from midday. But this doesn't carry with it the severe punishment of karet. So, although it's forbidden to eat chametz or own chametz already from midday, on Erev Pesach, one only gets the punishment of karet if one eats chametz during the 7 days of Pesach. Hachamim later said that to ensure a person doesn't end up eating chametz after midday or owning chametz after midday, already from an earlier part in the day, one should refrain from eating chametz. And they said this is by the end of the 4th hour, that means 2 hours before midday, a person should stop eating chametz rabbinically, which in England this year is 10 a.m. on Shabbat morning. With regards to disposing of all chametz, not owning chametz, that they said is sufficient 1 hour before midday, because owning chametz isn't as severe as eating chametz. Eating chametz is forbidden by the Torah, and carries with the punishment of karet, whereas owning chametz doesn't carry with it the punishment of karet. And so what happens is that from midday, it's forbidden from the Torah to eat or to own chametz, but that won't carry with it any punishment of karet. It's a biblical prohibition. From the hour before, one mustn't own chametz rabbinically, and from 2 hours before, i.e. from the 4th hour, end of the 4th hour, one is not allowed to eat chametz rabbinically. This year, because Pesach falls on Shabbat, on Friday one is allowed to eat chametz the entire day. In fact, we'll eat chametz on Friday night, on Shabbat morning, all the way through till 10 o'clock. We'll talk about the meals of Shabbat on another day. So one would expect that one is also allowed to dispose of the chametz any time on Friday. And that is the halacha. Since Pesach this year, on Friday, it's not Erev Pesach, one is allowed to dispose of chametz the entire Friday. Nonetheless, the Shulchan Aruch writes that Tov, it's good practice to dispose of the chametz at the same time one would do on a regular year. i.e., the 5th hour this year is about 11 o'clock in England. So despite the fact that really one can dispose of the chametz the entire day, it's good practice to do so by 11 o'clock on the Friday, so one won't come to get confused other years and dispose of the chametz after this time of 11 o'clock. So if a person can, one should try to do so. To dispose of all chametz one will not be using on Friday night or Shabbat morning. All other chametz one should get rid of. If one isn't able to do that, then one can do so the entire day, even after the 5th hour. How does one dispose of chametz? For us, for the Shulchan Aruch, for Sfaradim, it's sufficient for a person to dispose of it in a regular way, such as throwing it into the sea, flushing it down the toilet. You don't need to burn it. The Ramah holds for the Ashkenazim that they burn the chametz. Even this year, they don't burn the chametz. Any leftover chametz on Shabbat morning, they'll rely on the main halakha, then one can just dispose of it. With regards to sale of chametz, so of course one doesn't need to dispose of chametz one is selling. And so all sale of chametz contracts will take place before 11 o'clock on Friday in order to fulfill this good practice of everyone's chametz being disposed of by the 5th hour, by 11 o'clock. Nonetheless, the chametz contracts, if you read them this year, they should say the time until when one can possess chametz, and that will be included in the sale. So the sale is taking place at before 11 o'clock, but it will still cover all chametz you own until the Shabbat begins, or a few minutes until Shabbat begins, maybe 5 p.m. or so. It will still cover any chametz which is still owned until then, to cover those who haven't disposed of chametz before 11 o'clock. So just check your sale of chametz contracts, that they have that stipulation, so that it covers any chametz afterwards. In conclusion, one is allowed to eat chametz the entire day, on Friday, on Shabbat morning till 10 o'clock. Disposing of chametz, one should dispose of all chametz which a person will not be consuming on Friday night or Shabbat morning by 11 o'clock on Friday morning, if possible. If not, one has the rest of the day to dispose of the chametz, and one should try to ensure that one has a minimal amount of chametz left over for Friday night and Shabbat morning, so he can consume that, and any chametz which is left over, which is unable to consume one's family, then one can just throw that out, flush it down the toilet. That's a sufficient way of doing bi'ur chametz. Have a wonderful day.